Hi, beautiful soul, and welcome to another episode of our Lights On podcast. The guests are back. We have 2 more episodes, this one included, till the end of the season. And I'm super excited to be joined by Marta Checko. I'm trying to pronounce and honor her Polish roots. I'm not sure if she'll approve when she listens back to this, but I tried my best. I think I did okay. Anyway, I'm super happy because we are going to be talking about something that is radical, but very much needed, and that is taking leaps of faith. And I say this plural because I think throughout our lives we definitely take many leaps of faith. It's hardly only ever one. And we're going to be talking about the lessons that we've learned all the way, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into Marta's journey in terms of the moments and the circumstances that really led her into taking several leaps of faith. I think it's going to be a super inspiring and insightful conversation. So I'm really looking forward for you to give it a listen. Anyway, if you are new here and this is your first episode that you're listening from this podcast, my name is Katarina, Kat for short. I am a certified classical yoga teacher, but I'm realizing that I'm a lot more than that. So I can't really tell you yet the full story of myself because I only know bits and pieces, but I'm enjoying this uncertainty and this nothingness that represents the potential for everything. So I'm navigating my own leap of faith at the moment, you could say, as I really transcend beyond yoga and what that means for me. So this podcast very much started as a yogic philosophy podcast, but it has grown since then. So I do still share yoga philosophy because it has helped me grow and develop so much, and has helped me heal and really break from many traumas and many limiting beliefs that were holding me back. But now I get to write a new story, and so I'm happy to be broadening the podcast to include conversations with guests and people that hopefully will show you that there are a lot of ways to heal available to you. And that you are definitely not alone in this messy journey that is personal growth and that is your return to your authentic self. So if this resonates, stick around. Thank you for listening anyway, tuning in. I'm not going to go on for much longer, just to tell you that Marta is a business strategy and embodiment coach, and I love how her mission is all about helping people finding clarity, and more than that, is really about she helps people understand what it's holding them back, and then together create very much a path forward with a lot more clarity, with a lot more confidence. So I can't wait to get into this conversation. Without any further ado, this is what Marta and I talked about. I just wanted to really thank you for being here. I'm super excited for this conversation. Again, you're just one of those people that I just connected with and vibed with, and I'm really interested to dive deep into your journey. And so before we start into the actual conversation, just wanted to ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who Marta is and what Marta does.
So much, Katarina. My name is Marta Checko, in my Polish pronunciation, or Marta Checko for those English speakers. It's really a pleasure to be here today, talking about not only one leap of faith, I'm sure, but the cycles of leaps of faith that we take as individuals. I'm a former New Yorker. Right now, I call myself a part-time digital nomad based in Costa Rica. I'm a higher education and nonprofit former professional, really evolved into a multi-passionate creative solopreneur. I just wanted to also add, I'm a first-generation Polish American, a polyglot, and a passionate Taurus with a Virgo moon. So systems, stability, security seem to be in my nature. And yet, ironically, with having to take leaps of faith, it's having to let go of all of that. really here to not only balance analytics and details of programs, projects, systems, operations, all of that, but really turn that into a shift in exploration and experimental mindset while embodying the joy of what life has to offer.
I think that's a beautiful intro. And I love how you are very much into the systems, right, and structure, but then you did completely the opposite thing, which was, we'll dive deep into it, but was just like literally throw everything up in the wind and then here we go, off we go, we'll see how this whole thing works. I think that's beautiful. And I think honestly, like that's when we grow, right, is when we step outside of our comfort zone. So that's the way to do things.
Absolutely.
So to kickstart our conversation, so obviously we heard a little bit more about you and your introduction, but I wanted to hear more about like your journey, maybe as a professional, as a person. So growing into basically what the journey was to get to where you are right now, and for you to be who you are right now. So tell us a little bit about who you were before, maybe who you are now, and what was the journey of getting from point A to point B.
Where do I start, really?
Where
like,
do you
which
even start?
year?
Yeah.
I would say for a large part of my life, very studious, someone who is super disciplined, rigorous, not only a former classically trained pianist for over 12 years, but also a competitive swimmer. So always balancing all the things.
I love that. I love how you are very much like into sports, but also like arts. I'm just mind blown. I just love you. You're just so my person. Like we share so many things in common. Like, oh my God. Yeah, keep going.
Such a box of surprises.
Yes. Those are the best people, like what's the Forrest Gump film, right? Like that life is a box of chocolates, that kind of thing. Love that. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I know we connected a little bit on and off, and I think you had also mentioned that you had taken voice lessons. I did that as well. And yeah, I went into college at first in my head thinking, oh, I was going to do music. I actually, after 12 years of playing, kind of abandoned that sharply after some things happened in my life. Not the first time, and just decided to go a different direction. I actually went into the direction of studying international relations and German studies. So I went into school not knowing any German, because actually I had studied Mandarin in middle school and high school, and then was like, well, no, I'm just gonna do something else. It was really tied into a personal interest of my heritage and exploring really relations after World War II. And if anything, my research and then later my thesis, which I'm not here to talk about that, but it was always to not talk about the differences between cultures or people, but more so the connections and what brought them together. So whatever, after, school happens, then the big world, or like the real world, started, right? And I remember even then feeling after graduation was completely lost. What am I really doing? So of course I had that first year of not really sure of what was happening, what I'm doing, where I'm supposed to go. I had a personal, kind of a personal and physical aspect of my body kind of in that time, I would say, let me down, but it really revealed a chronic condition that I had in my spine that is really degenerative. So I had to take a few years to evaluate what I was doing, and where I was going to take care of that and manage pain, and really to minimize the impact on my daily life. And during that time, I worked at a nonprofit organization and really worked with international clientele to help them with internships and training programs, and doing cultural programming of that sort for many years. And so then another thing happened, in which I was a survivor of a personal injury accident. And so, that really knocked me down. I mean, literally. And then also left me in a few years of real deep work, not only on the physical end to mend my body, but also in a real evaluation stage of what is going on. And, I worked during that time. I continued to kind of carry on and try to do the things that I was supposed to be doing. Yeah. And I reached a point where I said, I can't do this anymore. It was a very drastic moment. There was more than one sort of, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing this. And at one point, it was actually October of 2021. I took a trip with my soul dog, Luna, up to kind of the upstate New York area where there are mountains. It's quiet. I just needed a few days of quiet, kind of not talking to anyone. And I remember even driving up to the location, and just as I entered the driveway, seeing the numbers 888. And on the time on the dashboard,
when the angel numbers start kicking in, you know this is gonna be good, because it's literally like in every single journey, it's like, oh, the damn angel numbers is when you're like, okay, fine, I'll do something about my life. Fine,
it was not just 888 on the dashboard. The time was 808. And as soon as I entered into the house, I guess it was, the first thing I saw immediately as I turned the lights on was a bright orange coaster, like the brightest one, and the word courage. And it was,
I mean, do you want any more obvious signs than that?
There's no one around me. I'm in the woods. Like, I barely have any cell service. And I'm like, this is alarming. Not that I was scared, but it was an alarm to really wake me up in my life. So after that, it wasn't much more time until I said, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know that this can't be it. That I can't keep going like this. So I'll pause there. I know I've shared a lot here. And I could always keep going. But
oh, no, I'm sure. I just love literally every single time we have angel numbers appearing, then you know something is about to happen.
You know it's going to be a good one.
Always. Yeah, exactly. Always the one. But I just love how we actually like share so many things in common, like being both of us, I guess, overachievers in school, and then like growing up very much in that culture of like, being your best. And I think comes very much from like a very European heritage, and perhaps from countries in Europe that were not so well off. There's very much this context and this pressure put on you from a very young age to to study things that are going to pay your bills, and that's usually a doctor or an engineer of some kind, or a lawyer. So I can definitely relate to that. And I think it's very interesting as well how you tapped into sort of your heritage, because I think sometimes we fail to recognize that there's a lot of, sometimes I think I can use the word trauma, but even like story, even if it's not just trauma, there's a lot of story there, especially when you're coming from a country that was so involved in World War II, and it was such a massive part of its history. I think it's important that you tapped into that to learn more about yourself, because these things perpetuate, right? And they continue down lineages and lineages of.
It's really a recognition of a recognition and an acknowledgement, and even just an understanding of my background, but also like what not only I was raised with, what my parents were raised with, and just a recognition of what my role is. And a lot of sort of my journey has been not necessarily a direct separation, but more so an acknowledgement of what is or what has been, what no longer works or serves a particular individual like myself in this lineage or in this culture, or even recognizing sort of the systematic oppressions that we do have, whether it be, as a society overall or within a specific culture, and recognizing that, okay, but maybe there's more. And it's really that kind of question, because it's so hard when you're raised in a particular culture that, there's so much pride, and then also, let's say, a level of stubbornness to be a certain way, right? A rigidness, most people don't consider Eastern Europeans to be the most warming individuals. And, we recognize that, but like, why is that, right? Like, why haven't we been able to even express emotions? Why aren't we able to talk about the things that are really frustrating us or bothering us, or even are able to admit that to ourselves? And that a lot of that does come from things that are taught or handed down to us. And then also just that we're embedded in. And I just, even, that's just one part of the story, but so very important in recognizing where we come from as individuals and really what drives us in certain ways.
Absolutely. And I think this is important as well to like our conversation about taking a leap of faith, because as much as it's about the future, it's also about you recognizing and acknowledging your past and where you come from. And it plays a massive role. And I think, in Portugal as well, me coming very much from a country where we had a pretty bad dictatorship until not so long ago, actually. I think we celebrated like our 75th year of freedom this year, so like last month. So it's not that long ago. So obviously, like my parents grew up with it. So when I say, actually I'm saying 75, no, it was in 1975. So that's not the 75th year. It's much more recent than that. Not even that. Because my mom and dad grew up with it, and so there's very much this culture still ingrained with us where we're very careful about like how we express ourselves, because obviously like you couldn't really freely express yourself. You couldn't read the books that you wanted to read. I remember like my granddad sort of like smuggling things in that were not supposed to be, in people's households, right? Like books and certain topics about certain ideology. So these things, they stay with you, and you don't realize unless you tap into them, and you're like, oh, okay, this is why, they're like this, and this is why this is all coming from. And then, as you said, then you have a choice of like keeping it or, letting it go if it no longer serves you.
Exactly.
So this next question that I've got here, I'm not sure like if you have, I think you tapped a bit into it already, but I wanted to know like when or what was a moment that you knew that you had to take a leap of faith. Obviously you saw a lot of signs from the universe, which were pretty clear, but was there anything else that made you go like, this really cannot continue any longer, and I just have to sort of trust the universe and see where this takes me? Like, what was the moment?
Yeah, I mean, both. At this point, I kind of call them the two major spiritual awakenings that I've had, and they were physically induced, because something, I could say something happened to my body, but now I have the sort of the shift and understanding that it was happening for me and to really shake me up and wake me up to what was happening. On both occasions, I kept asking myself the same question. One, on sort of the dark end being, is this all there is? And trying to counteract that sort of negative thought with, what if there's more for me? And that question of like, what if there's more? And instead of focusing on like, is this really all I have? I really needed to recognize all that I did have, and then really embody all of the privilege that I had. First of all, to even still be here, still have, quite literally all of my limbs that functioned, my organs that functioned. I could breathe on my own. There are so many accidents that happen on a daily basis, even all around the world, one that leave people gone within seconds, and others that leave them paralyzed and or with other disabilities. And while obviously I have certain constraints that I work through, I'm still able to move independently, and which took some time, of course, but I really had to harness that. And so that wasn't, of course, those are two very real situations that happened, and then on more than one occasion since then, I've asked myself, what if there's just more? And continuing to have the trust and faith that if this right now, if my present isn't what's working for me, it's not giving me the joy that I seek, or the excitement even to do something, okay, pivot, you can shift, you can move. And that was nothing sort of natural to me. That was all something that I, you know, tried, saw if it worked. If it didn't work, all right. And, so often we can get stuck in thinking, oh, well, I'm stuck on the bottom or on the bottom of something. I got to start over. But it's never, you're never starting from the bottom. You're always at a new level. You're just starting from a different platform in another dimension, and like recognizing that you can have trust and faith in whether you want to call it the universe or a God or, another spiritual being. There's always something there that is not only supporting you, but guiding you regardless if you see or feel it or not.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's important as well that we give ourselves like space and grace, because as you say, like sometimes we think, oh, but I've just failed massively at this, or, this didn't work out, when actually it's all just a learning experience, and you'll never be the same person as you once were. And, you may also think that, oh, perhaps I wasted, I don't know, however many years, working for the charity sector because I knew I didn't want to like work there, but I kept doing it out of, I don't know, out of my sense of whatever it is, of dedication, of, self-sacrifice, whatever you want to call it. But, that was also a learning experience. That was also like a moment for you to, if nothing, realize what you didn't want, right? And realize what you didn't want to do anymore. So it's still useful. And I think it's
still something.
Yeah, it's just so great. It's still something, exactly. It's still like telling you something about you and your journey moving forward.
And I think if I could add one more thing here, is I don't think 10 years ago, well, obviously I know 10 years ago, I'm not the same person as I was 10 years ago. I've evolved in many different forms. But I could never in that time say, oh, I intuitively feel that this isn't right. And it was really allowing myself some space to connect again with my mind, my body, my spirit, that allowed me to recognize this doesn't feel right for me. This isn't, I feel this heaviness. I feel this literal stuckness in my body, this stagnancy, this heaviness, this inability to feel energized, to feel motivated. Like there's something off here. And listening to that voice within me, that is so not easily accessed if you are not consciously aware of it, right? And I think so often we really struggle with burdening ourselves with, okay, but this is what I should be doing. This is what I've done, so I have to continue doing it, instead of allowing yourself to really tune into, at the very root, at your very core, what is it that you're feeling? And more importantly, how do you want to feel? Whether it's at the end of the day or at the end of your week or at the end of your year, your next year, like what is it that you're really harnessing and embodying on a daily basis?
I think that's so important. I'm so glad you added that, because it's true. Like our body has immense wisdom, and we really don't know how to tap into it. And I also, something that I realized when I started practicing yoga, and then when I started teaching more so, I just realized that we actually don't know our bodies very well. I mean, we can probably, obviously we recognize the limbs, and we recognize our feet, our legs, our hands, right? But beyond that, we don't actually know our body. We know our body a lot less than we think we do, because sometimes, when you describe a pose or you tell somebody to do something and you don't sort of give them any visual cues, you won't get it. Like a lot of people won't get it. And you kind of think, oh, wow, you're completely disconnected at this point from your physical body for whatever reason. And I think it's so important that we get in touch with ourselves again, and we understand those signs that the body is telling us that things are not right, because the body always knows. Like our body never fails. That gut feeling that you have, listen to that, because it's real. It's an actual indication. And another thing I would say is that if you struggle like connecting with that voice, it's trying to like associate feelings. So if something goes wrong, how did that feel like? And that will give you then clues for you to behave in the future. Like maybe, oh, like my heart, my chest was sort of heavy, or, because we all behave very differently, right? And our physical bodies may react differently. But yeah, making those connections, connecting those dots, it's a super powerful practice for sure. And as you say, like, forget about what you should be doing, forget about what society thinks that you should be doing. What is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to do? And I've asked myself this question recently many, many times. And as I started asking myself, the very first few times, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know, because I was so wrapped up in what I should be doing that I couldn't disconnect and tune into, okay, but what is it that you want to do? If you could do anything, what would you be doing right now? And that was such a hard question for me to answer. It was crazy. It shocked me really, because I thought I was pretty self-aware, which I think I am, but it still made me like take a step back and be like, oh, what is it that I really want to do?
We're
it's
programmed.
crazy. So
we're programmed to direct, like, to operate in a certain way, because like habits,
running on autopilot. I think you're not really like conscious. You're just here and reacting and going along with things.
Totally, I agree with that. I remember when a few months after I left that job, and I kind of call it a personal sabbatical with an undefined amount of time. And I already like took my first trip to Costa Rica. I met my now partner, and I was in this state of like, what am I doing? And I worked with my first coach at that time. And I will never forget it. And I will always attribute this sort of framework to her, and I use it myself. Is if you had no obstacles, like if money wasn't the issue, if like, I mean, that's usually what the number one thing that stops people, right? Like money, I can't do it. So if like money wasn't the issue, if you had all the time in the world, like you didn't have to think about anyone or anything else, like where would you want to, not only where would you want to be, but how would you want to feel in 3 months? Like, how would your day look like? Like, envision the perfect day and share that. And one, I was like, shit, I don't know. And then two, to actually share that with someone else, I was like, is this bad? Is this right? Like, she's gonna think I'm being ridiculous. And it was really going through that process of, again, listening to what I was telling myself, and also recognizing how that it was counterintuitive with what my body was telling me or what I wanted, like truly deep down, and giving myself compassion, acceptance, continuing to practice self-love, and just do the things that actually bring me joy on a daily basis, just to even harness those moments to be able to work to something that I wanted for myself, regardless of whether there's a direction or a path or something that I'm working towards. It was like, but can I sit here right now and enjoy this cup of coffee? I'm out on a hike. Oh my God, 2 years ago, I couldn't walk outside of my house alone. How am I here? Recognizing the gratitude in those moments, in those opportunities that we're really being offered on a daily basis. And it's so easy to, even now forget that, because, even I'll admit it, like I've moved on, I'm doing the next thing. And then I'll have moments where I have to be like, wait. I'm so focused on building the next thing or the next goal or the next phase. Like, where have I come from? Like, I'm frustrated about the progress of one thing, but like, I didn't even have this 3 months ago, 1 year ago, 3 years ago.
You didn't have nothing to be frustrated about even. So what are you talking about? Yeah, it's
so
a privilege.
How can I be frustrated about this when this is exactly what I asked for, and yet now I'm being confronted with an obstacle, and I'm allowing fear to enter? Like, let's evaluate.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's just it's just so difficult really to break out of that shell. I think that because even as we do that, and as you were saying, like once we start trying to get into like the bottom of who we want to be and what we want to become, there's still so much. I noticed myself, like there's still so much like rationalization, if that makes sense. Like it's almost as if you need to justify it for yourself. Yes. The yes or the no goes both ways, right? Because again, we're so used to doing what others expect of us that we lose ourselves in the process, and we stop experimenting, and we don't give ourselves permission to experiment, really, because oh yeah, I have no money, I have no time. Obviously those are the two classical limitations. But I just feel like it's a path that takes a while, but it's just needed. And as you said, you were sort of prompted and led by this notion of there must be more to this life. I was very much led and sort of prompted by that belief as well, because I myself as well couldn't believe that this was all there was to it. Like a commute of 3 hours every day back and forth, a 9 to 5 that did not fill me up, that did not bring me joy, even though I was working for a cause, so that was quite nice. But am I gonna reach the end of my life and then I'm gonna look back, and am I gonna be proud, or am I gonna feel that I've wasted all the best years of my life? And that is my biggest fear. That fear keeps the fire alive, because I cannot reach the end of this life and look back and think, what did you do?
Yeah. And that's like scientifically, like I've even just recently read an article about how there were like a handful of elderly individuals interviewed, and that were asked, what would you tell your younger self, right? And we could have this conversation even now about like, what would you tell yourself 10 years ago? But the number one topic, or maybe, I don't know, I can't remember if I have the memory for all three of them off the top of my head right now, but being one, that I didn't do the things that I really wanted to do. Two, that I didn't just go for it. And, it's really those feelings that I could not stand myself to say. And maybe this is a little drastic, but I also had to compare it to my literal accident, in which I was like, well, I could have not been here. It was very possible that, like, a wrong angle,
very
or even
real to you. And
and I can be a little bit maybe dramatic sometimes as well, or very intense in certain ways, and
not at all.
I had to like shake myself mentally and say, like, you could have not been here, and so now you're going to almost waste this opportunity that you're being granted to not try something else. Like, what is really holding you back? Is it really afraid to go into the unknown? Okay, so how can you work with that fear? Because even fear is showing you something, right? It's just like sometimes an experience can show you maybe not so much of what you want, but what you don't want. Fear can be showing you what you're afraid of, right? And so what you want to avoid. Okay, and so how can you, it's not about avoiding it, it's how do you work with it? Because just like water, it's going to enter into every space and crevice it can be, if you allow it. And instead of like pushing against it, you have to work with it.
Exactly. No, I completely agree, because again, for me, just the fear of reaching the end of my life and not doing what I want to do, it's so much bigger than actually going out and trying to do something, that I'm like, well, if I'm going by fear, if I'm going to be managed, or if I need to sort of embrace my fears, like, which one is it going to be? Is it the one of doing things, or then reaching the end of my life and then feeling like I've wasted it? Which one is stronger? And for me, definitely this one of really not even accomplish things. It's not even about accomplishing. It's just like living life, enjoying life, and making the most out of my time here is definitely stronger. So leap of faith it is, and trust in the universe it is, and trust in the unknown it is,
and trust in yourself, really.
Yes. And loving yourself enough as well, because I feel like a lot of the times we don't love ourselves enough to actually do what we want to do, because we feel like we don't deserve to do what we want to do. And this is another big topic of conversation, because I think we sometimes talk about the fear, we talk about all the constraints, but at the end of it is that lack of self-love, is the lack of feeling worthy enough of having everything that you desire in this life. And that's holding you back. And that's a big one to work through as well. I want us to sort of go back a little bit more into your journey, because you sort of talked to us about that journey into sort of upper New York in the mountains, and then you tapped into sort of your Costa Rica journey. But I wanted you to tell us a bit more about the actual leap of faith, about that moment where you didn't have anything planned, anything kind of perhaps thought out. What did you do? How did that all unfold?
Well, long story short, I uprooted my life and moved, or decided to move here. I say I'm a part-time digital nomad because I'm not still a resident. My partner and I are engaged, but if anyone has been involved in any long distance relationships, or knows anything about especially U.S. immigration laws, it is not easy. In any case,
sounds like fun.
In any case, really just, I remember again reaching another point where, sure, I was like driven by being in love with someone, and mostly just that remembering that like I needed more for myself, and even if it didn't work out, like I could still love myself. I made a huge move, because not only did I move myself, but my 60-pound dog Luna, who is a rescue in herself. I rescued her at 9 months. I call her Luna because I actually got her on a full moon, and it was like the anniversary of my accident on that same day. So it was like, I know that we were meant to be together, and take care of each other. And with her, I really learned to be myself again. She was protecting me as I crossed streets when I was suffering PTSD, and held me. She's an angel. In any case,
it's incredible how healing they are as well. How the healing that they bring.
Absolutely. And so I just like remember saying, well, I could always come back. I could always go somewhere else. Like at this point, I had taken several months of personal work, on myself, so much shadow work. I spent a lot of time hiking with her and just being alone and tuning into what it is that I really wanted or desire, what I was ready to receive as well. And it was allowing myself to trust myself, to say, I can do this.
You're capable. You can do it.
Even if it doesn't, quote unquote, work out in the way that I envisioned it, there can always be something else. Yeah. So and then sometimes you just kind of got to pull the trigger. Sometimes you have to kind of free fall it. I have not yet been bungee jumping, but I think about it as like that. You can fixate on it. You can think about it, and then at some point you're either going to let go and jump or not. And it's up to you to make that decision. And I just started asking myself, why not?
As opposed to why, but like why not? Why not me?
Like why would I do this? And then I counteracted it with why not? Why wouldn't I do it?
Yeah. Why shouldn't I do this? Exactly. So what was the biggest lesson that you've learned, or like the best piece of advice that you can share with others?
I started contemplating on this, and I think I wrote at least 15 things down. So let's see if I could wrap this up in some way. Number one, nothing is linear, and everything is its own cycle and comes in waves. The good points, like I'm not every good thing has to have necessarily a downfall where it ends, but not everything is always up without having a little bit of down. There's that duality that we have to learn to work with. It's like there's not just white and black, there's the gray space. There's not just like
And you're in
sunny
constant transformation as well.
There's exactly. And it's like those spaces where it's unclear, where it's hazy, where it's cloudy, where sometimes it's those moments that, yes, they're probably the toughest to be in, but they I would say offer the most transformation, because they're the ones that really allow you to align, to activate, and then to give you direction. And that it's a lot easier to get somewhere if you give yourself the compassion, love, and understanding, as opposed to judgment, shame, and criticism.
Yeah, that will get you nowhere. I promise. That will get you nowhere. And just, the sooner you embrace the highs and lows and the duality, the better. And then I also think it's important to sort of shift, and maybe this is one of your points, to like shift the perspective into like being good and something being bad. Like you really, if we think about it, there's no such thing as a good thing or no such thing as a bad thing. It's all about perspective and how you look at things. And you know, the good thing is you have power over your perspective, so you can change that, and you can change the way you see situations. You can change the way how you perceive situations. So yeah, those labels sometimes are not helpful.
Yeah, it's like for the spiritual folks who are into tarot, you know, sometimes you'll get a card and you're like, oh no. And it's not really that. It's not good or bad, just like you're saying. It's a reflection of something. It's mirroring something that maybe you're not tapping into. And being comfortable with that, like all aspects of the spectrum, is a constant learning experience that you know, you have to choose to be courageous to face. If you have made the commitment and dedication to not only learn about yourself, but to offer yourself the best possible version of yourself for you.
And that involves as well, again, as you said, bringing in a lot of compassion and really dropping the shame, the blame, the guilt, because that's really the only way you're gonna be able to do that in a way that's unconditional. Okay, so we have 2. What's the other 13 pieces of advice that you have that you want to share?
Okay, so I'll say over here, you know, you've been granted your intuition that everyone has been granted intuition to guide them, and only your intuition can really guide you. It's really being open to access what is deeply within you. Again, we sort of talked about that in our last point. But it is those items of, you know, recognizing what you do already have within you, and where you're being directed. Because, we're not doing that. It doesn't come naturally to most of us. Even like listening to our body, like, our shoulder is hurting, but is it really because like we have an injury, and maybe it is, or a combination of something, or is it also because you feel like you're carrying the weight of something else? Are you holding on to guilt, or are you holding on to some sort of burden or hardship? And you know, really aligning with not only what is happening, and why it's happening, but instead, how can we move with it and then past it? You know, you can't always just let go of pain, saying, okay, I'm not going to be in pain anymore. You gotta sometimes have to learn to work with it. And it can your pain is power.
And transmute it. Transmute it. Absolutely. I think it's important as well because when we talk about like the body and the intuition, like the funny thing is like the universe is always sending you signs, and sometimes they're in you know, in the form of pain, in the form of physical injury and conditions and disease. The interesting thing is they're gonna keep getting worse and worse and worse until you do something about it. If you're really going down the wrong path, you will be told about it, and you will be forced to slow down one way or the other. So the sooner you realize the signs, and the sooner you tap into your body enough to recognize the signs, you're honestly doing like the best thing that you could probably do for yourself, because the signs are going to get more obvious. and more
Yeah.
intense.
And more intense. Yeah, it's like you're gonna get it or you're gonna get it.
Yeah, exactly. There is no other option. So that's definitely like a very important point. Any other lesson, any other advice?
Yeah, I also wanted to speak to, as someone who was not raised, and even myself, like I was not open to even allowing myself to experience certain emotions, mostly because I was afraid of them. Like if I was crying or if I was upset at something, that meant I was weak or not resilient or not able to, deal with
complete the
it.
opposite. It means that you're resilient. But yes, I was through that journey as well, very much myself. I totally know where you're coming from.
The lesson is that your emotions have a lot of power, but it's also not exactly the ones dictating everything. That you're really the experiencer of the emotion. And because you're experiencing an emotion, that doesn't mean it defines you as a person or, even where you are in a certain moment. It's, again, acknowledging it, learning to recognize it, and then working with it. Nothing is against you. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And so really remembering to just have those shifts in perspectives. Not everyone is going to, be the most optimistic or even, here being like, oh, everything is just beautiful at all points of the day. No, because there's suffering, there's pain, everyone has challenges and struggles, but shifting challenges to celebrations, being open to trying to see another side of something, maybe using an aspiration into an achievement. Like there's always some way to grow from something, and growing in a way that's authentic to you, with your energy, with your desires, with your values, and it's allowing yourself to do all of that.
Yeah, and again, like there's a lot of bravery in that, and I always remind myself that emotions are energy in motion, really. So they come in, they'll come out, and it's very much like riding a wave, and there's a lot of power using them and transmuting them, because just because you're experiencing this emotion doesn't mean that you have to like fully lean into it, and be, if it's sadness, you don't have to be completely give up and lean into the sorrow, but you can acknowledge that you're sad, you can acknowledge why you're sad, and then you can choose the other way, which is about focusing maybe on what you've got at the moment and all the good things that bring you joy at the moment, and the celebration moments. Because I think one thing that I struggled here, and I think many people do when we talk about using emotions and like changing or transmuting sort of pain into power, is that you often sometimes fall in the trap of toxic positivity. And it's really like a fine balance, I think. But for me, like the biggest thing is that is again the shame, the blame, and the guilt, and releasing that. So you feel that, you feel sad, you feel angry, but you're not blaming yourself for it, and you're not repressing yourself and trying to force yourself to not feel that emotion. It's important that to sort of get away from toxic positivity, but still be able to transform this into power. Like you need to acknowledge the emotion, and you need to acknowledge it with compassion, and say, this is why I'm like this. I'm human. At the end of the day, I believe that we come to Earth to experience as many emotions as we can. I think it's one of our biggest and most precious gifts, is that we get to experience things, and we get to experience emotions, the highs and the lows. That's part of a beautiful life. And so it's about acknowledging them, and not falling into that trap of like, oh, no, I'm not sad, I'm just gonna immediately sort of bring forth the positive emotion because I don't want to feel into it. So as you navigate this, ask yourself whether you are giving yourself the time, the space to acknowledge, to process, or if you're just running away from it because you don't want to feel into it. I think there's a big difference into this.
I was
change.
Someone who would distract myself with any next task. Same. Even going back to school time, like extra courses, extracurriculars, just like occupying myself, keeping myself busy, so that I didn't have. And I remember even having a conversation with a group of friends. I think it must have been during my college times now, so 10 years ago, in which I remember saying, like, I can't stop, because if I stop, I will break down. And there's actually, I don't know if you're familiar with the show. There's an American sitcom called Parks and Recreation. And there's one character where the character there, Chris Traeger, is going through depression, and he's like riding a bike, and they're like, Chris, you don't have to go do this. And he's like, I move my body because I can't stop. If I stop, I'll die. Or, you know, something along those lines. It's one of my favorite shows. And I just like remember resonating with that, being like, yeah, well, obviously I can't stop. I can't keep, I got to keep moving. I got to keep going. I got to keep looking for the next workout class or my next, you know, at one point I almost became like a spin instructor, because I was also just trying to, this is before my accident, but I was like, maybe I'm now ready, like to take a leap of faith and just do something else. And I didn't have the courage to do that. But that was a learning experience in it itself. You know, I was always looking for the next thing, and that showed a lot of, you know, of what I was missing, the ability to slow down, the ability to accept myself as I was, and allow myself the space to be guided as to where I was going and wanted to go truly at my core, in my roots, in my desires.
Yeah, no, that's such an impactful thing, because I think we can all relate to this, right? When we just we hate being busy, but it's almost as if we seek more work and more things to do, because we just can't stop at this point. We're just and I see that as well sometimes in practice in my yoga classes, because we have the relaxation part as part of them. And you know, when I was learning and training to become a yoga teacher, I was one of the aspects that they mentioned is that, you know, this can actually be for some people the hardest part of the class. And I was like, what do you mean is the hardest part of the class? Like you're lying down, you're doing nothing. Like, how can this be hard to people? And then I started teaching, and that's when like the penny dropped, and I was like, yeah, of course, like we're just not used to relaxing. We don't know how to relax. We don't know how to stop. Like they may be lying down there, or, you know, in a yoga mat, but their mind is probably going miles an hour into all the things that they've left to do, or the things that they need to come back to, or, you know, the class they want to sign up for, or the book they want to read, or, you know, the Netflix show that they've left last evening. Is just a constant hamster wheel, if you will, of things to do, and we seek more and more things to do every single day, because we're afraid to stop, and we're afraid to really process things.
I mean, I was the person that would never go to like a hatha class. I was always doing vinyasa, if not even ashtanga, because I was like, I got to keep going. And I was also the person that said, I can't meditate because my mind is too busy. When, again, alarm going off, like your mind is going too busy because you're not giving the space for it to slow down.
Exactly. And you're not being brave enough to actually sit with yourself, with your energy, in quiet, in peace, which is something that we should all be capable of doing. But I certainly wasn't as well until very not so long ago, actually. And mind you, like, I'm a yoga teacher, so I should know how to, you know, about calm and peace, right?
No,
but
there's
you know,
nothing you
obviously
should.
we're all in and we're all in very different journeys as well, in terms of what we experience and what we understand as calm and peace as well, and going into like a proper definition of it and feeling comfortable with it. But yeah, I think that's such a good point, is that we just don't allow ourselves to really process anything or feel into anything. And if we have an empty space, we'll fill it up immediately with whatever it is that we want to do next. So I think we 100% relate. So I have one more question for you, but I'm not too sure if you have like any other like lesson or advice that you really want to share on here before we move on.
One thing here, that so often we feel like we don't have control, and yet we have control over everything and nothing. We, at the very bottom, all we can control is ourselves. And on the flip side of that, that's the best thing that we can have.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm
And it's the hardest.
long-winded, so I'll just pause there.
No, I think that's amazing, and I think that's a very important point, because that's the only thing we can control. It's not easy by any means. You need to be brave, and again have an enormous amount of self-love, because you need to feel worthy enough to be able to learn how to control yourself. But yeah, you absolutely can control everything. And I hear so often, oh, but I can't control like stress, or I can't really control how I react to things. Well, you do. You really do. So it's time, maybe press pause for a moment and just come back to yourself, and we'll start to work through that slowly. But you can absolutely control yourself.
It's like, instead of slamming the door, maybe just pause and take a breath.
Yeah, you can absolutely control yourself. Like, you can control yourself. You just don't want to because you're lazy. I'm sorry, this is the hard truth, and it's just gotta come out and say it.
It takes work. It's work.
Yes. Yeah, it's work. It's a practice. It's like a muscle, right? It's like building. If you go to weightlifting because you want to build your upper arm or your torso and your arm muscles, it's the same thing. Like you need training every day. But it's the best thing that we'll ever do, and you'll never live life in the same way, because now you own your life, and you feel really powerful in a very good way. So there's that.
I agree.
Okay, so one last question is more about yourself, and I would like to know how you now help others navigate this change, this gray period, and how you help others as well embrace their best lives. So tell us a little bit about what you currently do.
Yeah, so right now I'm a business strategist and embodiment coach. So what that means is oftentimes I really am listening to what other creators, especially other entrepreneurs, and particularly the female audience, the challenges that they're working through. Because most often, if you're having something go what you call wrong in your business, it's not about your business, it's about you, and something that you're perhaps needing to work through. I really love to get into conversations about the shadow side and really the deep-rooted challenges that one may face, the obstacles, and connect with your roots. And when I say roots, it's not only your values, but those deep sacred desires that perhaps you haven't even been able to unveil yet. I really love to have conversations, whether it be through one-on-one coaching sessions, or even in just casual conversation, because I'm nothing but, trying to have a conversation about what is your greatest passion in life. Because I just kind of intuitively gather that from someone else. Really tapping into what excites you, like what is driving you, what is your value, and then where is that in your vision? I think we're moving into a society where we recognize that we are operating in cycles, and more of us are here to break those cycles. And so I really tap into the individuals that are ready to be held, that are open to being held in the space, and are ready to shift those challenges into celebration. So I intentionally create, a space through my coaching program where someone can be safe to not only share, but I think more importantly, to be heard. I listen with intention. I not only am able to really, again, offer that intuitive guidance that I just feel when I'm connected to someone, but give, really intuitively feel how they operate, where they, may feel like they need support, where is that coming from, and how to work with that. Because again, it's not something to work past or just neglect. It's something to learn how to work through, just like our shadows and those gray spaces that we talked about. And even if something feels unreachable, reminding someone and remembering myself that you are allowed to have the desire that is deep within you, even if it is hidden. So I'm really here to support others in embodying all of the branches of their being, whether they're multi-passionate or passionate about one thing and 150% into it. Someone who is here to explore, different sides of themselves and to just be guided by their curiosity. I think so often, right, we get stuck into the cycles of what we should be doing, and we forget how courageous it could be just to try something because we're curious. And so I really encourage working with the fear, not letting go of it, but using it as power in revealing what it is you want.
I think that's such a beautiful message, and I love how you talk about like celebrations as well, and how we, because it is at the end of the day a matter of perspective, and I think that's a beautiful way how you really shining a light on your desires and how to get to them, because there is one thing that I believe in, is that if we desire something, it's because we're meant to have it. It wouldn't be placed inside our hearts and inside ourselves if we didn't have the capacity to achieve that desire and to sort of manifest that desire into our physical reality, right? Like it wouldn't be there, the dream, you wouldn't have it if you couldn't reach it, if you couldn't achieve it. And I trust in that a lot. It's what keeps me going sometimes when, if I can't see anything else, if I can't really make sense of anything else, I know that I have this dream. It's because I'm capable of achieving it. And I think if you can trust in that, you'll get there. It's only a matter of time.
I share a lot of sort of affirmations, mindset approaches through my Instagram primarily, but of course on other social media, including Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. And I actually, what you said reminded me of, I posted the affirmation that I call in a series of reminder. And I had said, you wouldn't want it if it wasn't already yours. It's already on its way to you. You have to trust in that. And even if it's a little bit delusional, lean into that. Why not?
Yeah. We love Delulu. We love it.
We love Delulu.
We love it. Embrace it. Just go for it. And by the way, everybody listening, I'll leave Marta's links and sort of like website and social media down below as well in the description of the episode. So please do reach out and connect. Before we say goodbye, however, I do have one more kind of a question, you could say, but it's something that I always ask my guests, and is about you. If you feel called to share a particular message with the collective, is there anything that you'd like to share, anything that you'd like to add, anything that you feel called to communicate to this collective today?
Right now, the immediate thing that came to mind really was the power of community and tapping into that. If you feel called to have more, talk about it. If you feel called to hear more about something, ask to hear it. Because even putting it out in the universe that maybe you feel like you're needing a specific type of support or needing help in any way, you never know what someone else is going through or perhaps even gone through. And so often we learn about certain things perhaps after the fact, because we have this shame of talking about it in the moment, or, maybe we end up being closed off. You never know what someone else is going through or has gone through and how they can offer support to you. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, I had connected with more than one individual, even in the last year, due to an accident that was, random. And it doesn't mean that, I'm an expert in, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a social worker. I can't offer perhaps the same tools and resources, but just allowing yourself to put it out into the world, have a conversation with someone, because you're not alone. And I just remember feeling so alone for so long, not knowing what to even make about all the feelings that I was feeling, the waves of the emotions, whether it be through anxiety, depression, PTSD, suffering through panic attacks. There is community, and there's power in community, but community also begins with you. And we all have a personal responsibility to talk about our story, share about your story. If you feel called to, of course,
Mm-hmm.
no one can be forced to do something they're not aligned in doing. But recognizing that talking about even your pain is powerful, because you
Mm-hmm.
never know how you can help someone else, or, even just make them feel a little bit held for a little bit of time. And even if that connection
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything later, it's that one
Mm-hmm.
moment of difference that maybe made
Yeah.
their day. And that's powerful. I have more than
Yeah.
one situation where maybe someone took me out for a coffee, or even just joined me during a lunchtime walk, so that I could run an errand when I was afraid to cross the street on my own and crying about it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's those little acts of kindness, kind of like if you see
Mm-hmm.
someone's bag of groceries fall to the ground, like just help them.
Pick it up.
It
Yeah.
doesn't cost you
Just help them out.
anything.
Yeah.
There's karma and all of that, but there's power in community, and community
Yeah.
begins with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so important, as you say, because there's definitely like a proactive element as well to
Yeah.
this. And it's very much like a two-way street, right? And I think if you want to connect with maybe different people that you haven't connected with because you're in a totally different path than your current loved ones or your current friends, there are people out there going through that same path. And I think especially, and probably as well, if you're listening to this podcast, is probably because you're in some sort of like spiritual awakening process or, healing process of your own. And we've talked about here how lonely that is. But you do have a tribe out there. But sometimes we do have to be the first people to share our pain and to put ourselves forward to then attract those people and to finally receive the support, the community that we so want to access. And I've felt this as well, and I've experienced this myself as well. Like finally, it was only really when I started opening up that I started really connecting with people that were very much on the same wavelength as I did, and I was like, these are my people finally. I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. And yeah, there's a lot of power in community. I agree as well. Karma, or that's another conversation for later. But I totally agree with you. Marta, thank you so much. I don't want to take more of your time. Just to say a big thank you for sharing your incredible journey, for being so brave, for being so open, so vulnerable. I do feel like you're such an inspiration. And you just bring light to wherever you are, and I think that's a beautiful thing, even online. Even if we're miles apart. So I'm just very grateful to have you, to chat with you. I'm sure we'll continue chatting many, many more times. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today, for everything that you've shared here. And then I'm sure we'll speak very, very soon.
Such an honor, Katarina. I got chills as you said that. Really, just a true honor to have my energy to the exchange with yours, and to share some of our messages with a greater collective. Whoever taps into this podcast episode or any of your other previous ones, we have always something to learn if we allow ourselves to be guided by our curiosity. And, I just hope someone is able to resonate and connect with some of what we have shared. And if anything, I truly enjoyed getting to know you even on a deeper level, and just appreciate you holding space for me to share my story, my never ending story, because we're always evolving. And I'm just excited to see what this next leap of faith may look like, and then talk about it later.
Absolutely. So yeah, everybody, thank you. It was such a pleasure. We'll see where the next leap of faith take us both. And maybe we'll come back here to talk to you about, the 2.0 version of this conversation very, very soon. Thank you so much, Marta.
Thank you.
A big, big thank you to Marta. Honestly, I loved our 1 hour together so much. And I'm just really thankful to have people with such light and with such inspirational stories in my life. And I'm super happy as well to be sharing this space, my podcast, with these people, with these beings of light, of love. I hope you enjoy the conversation. I hope that you take away that you are not alone, that this journey that we're in is very, very messy, but very, very rewarding. So if you are considering your leap of faith, do it. The universe will catch you. You can be sure of that. And if you'd like to follow Marta's journey and mine, we are both as authentic as we can be. We really try to share the highs and the lows, the peaks, the throughs. So I'll leave all our social media handles below in case you'd like to connect with us and chat with us. Also, if you have any questions about our journeys and about our own leap of faith and how we've been navigating that, I think I speak for both Marta and I that we're very available for a catch up or a chat or, just an exchange of messages on social media. So do connect using the handles that I'm going to leave in the episode description. And then I guess in the meantime, I'll just say goodbye. So the next episode will be the last one of this series. I tend to work on a 9-episode series. Otherwise, I'll be honest, podcasting is really overwhelming. And I want to make sure that the conversations I bring to you are relevant and authentic. Also, I'm currently moving house, so it's not the ideal environment to be recording a podcast in peace. So I'm hoping to come back towards either end of August or early September, depending on how my life is. But pretty much by early September, you'll have me back, I'm pretty sure, with another series with more guests, maybe a few guests that you've listened to already. Again, as we dive deeper into their journeys, who knows? I'm going to take some time as well to plan this. Regardless, there's still one more episode in the series. I'm not quite sure what this is going to be about yet, so stay tuned, and I'll see you very, very soon for another episode. And until then, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, a lovely rest of your week, and take care. Remember that you can only serve others if you serve yourself first, so make sure that you pour into your cup first. All right, take care. Bye.